This is the story of two hoes, the Homunculi and Hohenheim. Boom. Demonetized for saying ho.
Humankind cannot gain anything without first giving something in return. To obtain, something of equal value must be lost. That is alchemy's first law of equivalent exchange. We are offering this complete Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood timeline. Will you exchange it with your attention? Maybe a like or a subscribe. You know, like equivalent exchange. If you want. The story of Fullmetal Alchemist has a lot going on. It might be kind of tough to catch up and figure out what happened when and who's who. Well, don't you worry about that. We'll be covering all things Elric in this extensive look at the stunning 2009 series, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. And yes, only Brotherhood. It's the most faithful adaptation of the manga. So sorry fans of the 2003 series, but we'll be considering the events of that series as non-canon. Although, we stan it, so if you want to check out why you should watch both, definitely go take a peek at our video, Fullmetal Alchemist, why you should watch both. Let's start with the birth of the homunculi. Let's start with the birth of... Okay, sorry. Let's start with the birth of the homunculi, from 1480 to 1500. In the ancient desert country of Xerxes, a young man, simply known as Slave 23, lives in service to a renowned alchemist. He's relatively content, but his life gets turned upside down when his master uses him for an experiment, specifically his blood. The result of this experiment is a homunculus, a shapeless, shadowy creature that the alchemist keeps inside a small flask. The dwarf in the flask is grateful to Slave 23 for giving him life, so it gives him an actual name, von Hohenheim.
Well, actually, his full name is Philippus Areolus Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim.
Okay, you get it.
The two become friends as the homunculus teaches Hohenheim to read, write, do math, science, and even basic alchemy.
Knowledge.
Hohenheim's master even promotes him from slave to assistant. Upgrade. One day, the homunculus tells Hohenheim about its one dream, to escape the flask one day without dying. Ah, so that's why it's being so friendly. Shortly after, the king of Xerxes calls upon the homunculus to search for a way to achieve immortality. Next comes the immortality ritual, from about 1500 to 1550. After a decade of preparations, the day of the immortality ritual finally comes. The nationwide transmutation circle is complete, with the king of Xerxes at its center. Well, close to it at least. Since nobody knows alchemy better than the homunculus, it completely tricks everyone and places itself and Hohenheim at the true center of the circle. From there, over 1 million people living in Xerxes have their souls ripped from their bodies. At the center of the circle, Hohenheim and the homunculus get pulled into the Gate of Truth, the source of all alchemical knowledge and the entrance to God's domain, an area where no mortal is ever meant to step foot. The two of them take in 500,000 souls each, giving them the gift, or curse, of immortality. When Hohenheim wakes up, he's horrified to find that the entire city is in ruins, littered with corpses. There's also a man lying next to him who looks identical to Hohenheim. The man is the homunculus, now freed from his glass prison and rocking a new Hohenheim-shaped vessel. With Xerxes completely devastated, the two immortals part ways as living, breathing philosopher's stones. The founding of Amestris from about 1550 to 1600. While wandering the vast desert. While wandering the vast desert outside. The cupcake frosting that is the land of While wandering the vast desert outside of the ruins of Xerxes, Hohenheim collapses in the sand. Some travelers from the eastern kingdom of Shang rescue him and take him back to their home country. Once he's in Shang, Hohenheim begins teaching its people his knowledge of alchemy. His advanced knowledge, combined with the basic forms of alchemy already being performed in Shang, forms a new type of alchemy called alkahestry. While Hohenheim's spreading knowledge, the homunculus is far busier with a more nefarious agenda. Amestris, a country founded by an unknown party, began around the year 1550. However, it was a pretty basic country with no government or direction to speak of. Enter the homunculus. He begins teaching its residents alchemy, but just enough that they can't use it against him one day. Pretty smart, you punky little eyeball. By weaponizing their knowledge of alchemy, Amestris begins to expand its territory, flexing on smaller territories and taking them over. The homunculus creates an underground lair in the capital of the country to serve as his base of operations, where he can control the country from behind the scenes. In his lair, he would use himself as a buffer against tectonic energy, so that alchemists would be dependent on the energy from the souls of Xerxes trapped within him. In July of 1558, just 8 years later, Amestris declared war on a small city-state to the west known as Riviere. It's the first major war in the history of Amestris and perhaps one of its bloodiest. Now comes the birth of Father, from about 1600 to 1835. As Amestris becomes more and more of a powerhouse, the homunculus starts creating his own personal squad of homunculi. Using the souls of Xerxes trapped within him, he gives birth to a brand new homunculus named Pride. From here on out, he starts referring to himself as Father. So I will too. I mean, why not? Over the next few decades, Father creates more and more homunculi, including lust, greed, envy, and sloth. Meanwhile, Amestris invades other city-states like Cameron and Wellesley, taking them over as well. When Father creates Sloth, he tasks him with digging a massive transmutation circle underneath all of Amestris. A job like that will take over a century.
It's so annoying.
I hear ya. I don't know, it might get done sooner if you didn't put Sloth in charge. Well, he's technically the fastest homunculus, but okay, whatever, I'm getting off topic. Whenever the transmutation circle gets done, Father intends to turn the entire country's population into a philosopher's stone. Kinda like what happened with Xerxes. While Sloth digs his tunnel, Father attempts to create a new gate of truth, but he completely fails and accidentally creates Gluttony, the sixth homunculus. Father orders this big bundle of carnivorous love to go off to Xerxes and consume the transmutation circle inscriptions within the castle remains. The evidence will be gone and Gluttony will be out of his hair for a few years. Seems like a win-win for Father. As annoying as Gluttony is, the third homunculus, Greed, enters his rebellious teenager phase and defects from the homunculi. He's after the finer things in life and doesn't want to be tied down by Father's orders. So he heads to the city of Dublith while taunting Father to his face. A few years later, Amestris graduates from invading small city-states to invading large neighboring countries, like the southern country of Arago. This war would continue for over a century. With each area that Amestris takes over, the country starts to resemble a massive circle. And with Sloth slowly chipping away at the ground underneath, Father's plans are beginning to take shape. Führer King Bradley rises to power from about 1850 to 1890. In 1854, Father and the Amestrian military launch a secret program to seek out the perfect ruler of Amestris, or rather, the perfect face of Amestris. They gather a group of male orphans and train them in politics, military strategy, and swordsmanship. When the boys' training is complete and they're of age, the final step is to inject them with a philosopher's stone filled with Father's wrath. Out of all the orphans, only prospective Führer number 12 survives the experiment. He becomes Wrath, the first homunculus with the ability to age. Under his new name, King Bradley, he quickly rises through the ranks of the Amestrian military thanks to his combat prowess and dedication to the military ideals of Amestris. And, you know, because his father owns the company, nepotism. In 1894, he becomes Führer King Bradley. He begins his reign over all of Amestris.
Can I just say that when I was watching the series, I always got confused at the whole Führer King. I thought...
Yeah, Führer, King, well, the military kingdom of Amestris.
I mean, that's true. I just thought he was like a king, and I don't know.
That's cool. That's cool. For more information on how Führer and King can go together in a title, watch our next explainer, titles in anime, and how they make sense. But more on him later. Let's see what Hohenheim has been up to. He's still alive and kicking, sadly. After spending several centuries traveling the world and gaining as much knowledge and experience as he could, he finds his way to Amestris and settles in a small town called Risenbuhl. He becomes good friends with many of the townsfolk, including a young woman named Pinako Rockbell. Around 1873, Pinako and her husband give birth to a son, Yuri. About 22 years later, Hohenheim meets Trisha Elric, and they fall in love and get married. For a time, Hohenheim is finally at peace, but unfortunately, this is far from the end of his tale. Birth and death. From about 1890 to 1900s. Around the age of 18, Izumi Harnett leaves her home in western Amestris to travel to the northern region of Briggs and learn alchemy from the famed alchemist Silver Steiner. When she gets there, she has to prove she's a worthy apprentice by surviving in the fierce Briggs wilderness for 1 month alone with nothing but a machete. Izumi, being the badass that she is, accepts the challenge and passes with flying colors. During her time in the mountains, she coins her own view of the universe. One is all is one. When she returns to Steiner, he explains that he's actually Silver Steiner's brother, Gold Steiner, and he only knows hand-to-hand combat. Rightfully pissed, she knocks him unconscious and leaves to train herself in alchemy. One day, she bumps into a man named Sig Curtis, not that Curtis, and move to Dublin to start a family. Sadly, they lose their child during childbirth, absolutely devastating Izumi. Depressed and desperate, Izumi crosses the line that no alchemist should ever cross: human transmutation. She opens the gate of truth and learns from the truth that she must pay a toll in to bring her child back. She sacrifices some of her internal organs, leaving her constantly ill and incapable of ever becoming pregnant again. Even worse, her attempt to revive her child is a failure. Whatever's in that human transmutation circle is not her child. While Izumi's suffering in Dublin, Hohenheim and Trisha are living a wonderful life together in Risenbol. In 1899, Trisha gives birth to their first son, Edward. That same year, Yuri Rockbell and his wife Sarah have a daughter named Winry. And just 1 year later, the Elrics have their second son, Alphonse. Life in Risenbol is peaceful, for the time. The Ishvalan Civil War, from about 1900 to 1910. At some point, Amestris overtook a southeastern nation known as Ishval. However, the locals were never content with their new leaders and frequently lashed out against the Amestrian government. Tensions had been high, but everything changed in 1901 when the homunculus Envy shapeshifts into an Amestrian soldier and shoots an Ishvalan child. It's a deliberate attempt to instigate a civil war, and it sure works. All hell breaks loose and a massive and bloody battle ensues. Arago has their own grudge against Amestris, so they aid the Ishvalans in their fight. The war spreads over the entire eastern half of Amestris, turning an entire fourth of the country into a war zone. When news of the civil war reaches Risenbol, Hohenheim realizes that father's creating a nationwide transmutation circle. A massive amount of blood must be shed on each of the country's corners, and Ishval is the second to last one father needs. With a heavy heart, Hohenheim leaves his new family behind in Risenbol, promising Trisha that he'll find a way to end his immortality so they can die of old age together. Even with their dad gone, the young Elric brothers gain an interest in alchemy and begin to practice it. In 1904, a plague breaks out in Amestris, and Trisha falls gravely ill. On September 20th, 1904, Trisha Elric sadly succumbs to her illness and passes away. The mood in Risenbol turns somber, as things get even more heated down in Ishval. In 1908, 7 years after the Civil War began, FÜHRER King Bradley issues Order 3066, ordering Amestrian state alchemists to the front lines to act as human weapons. One of the state alchemists, Solf Kimley, uses a new philosopher's stone created by military researcher Tim Marco. Kimley's a sadistic monster, so he uses the power of the stone to kill innocent Ishvalans, wiping out an entire Ishvalan clan and severely scarring one guy in particular, Scar. This final order ends the war horrifically, causing the painful deaths of countless Ishvalans. Amestrian soldiers occupy Ishval, forcing the refugees to escape and spread throughout the rest of the country. As the war ends, Kimley swallows his philosopher's stone and kills the military leaders who gave it to him. But he eventually gets caught and imprisoned. Dr. Marco feels immense guilt over his creation of the stone, so he goes into hiding. During this time, Scar makes vows to wipe out all state alchemists as revenge for his brother and his people. Yuri and Sarah Rockbell are giving him medical aid, but he wakes up in a blinding fury and kills them. From there, Scar flees Ishval and heads north. The ultimate taboo, from about 1910 to 1913. After the Ishvalan Civil War, nobody is happy. It's pretty rough. During a particularly rainy summer, Risenbol gets flooded, causing a whole mess of damage. Luckily, Izumi and Sig happen to be passing through, so Izumi uses her alchemy to create a dam. After witnessing her powerful alchemy, the now orphaned Ed and Al approach her, asking if she'll teach them. She refuses at first, but after learning that they're orphaned, puts them through a trial very similar to the one she endured in Briggs. Izumi brings the two brothers out to a small island in the middle of a lake near Dublin. They have to survive for 1 month with nothing but a knife and a cryptic phrase: "One is all is one." When Izumi returns, she sees the boys have learned to fend for themselves. So for the next 6 months, Izumi teaches the boys everything she has to offer about alchemy and martial arts before deeming them ready to begin learning on their own. But once they get home, the Elrics have other plans. They try to revive their mother using the ultimate taboo, human transmutation. Of course, it fails horribly, and Edward loses his left leg, But Alphonse isn't so lucky. His entire body is sucked into the gate. In a state of panic, Ed exchanges his right arm to bond Alphonse's soul to a suit of armor lying nearby. He saves Al's soul, but now Alphonse is a sentient suit of armor, unable to eat, sleep, or feel anything like wind or cold. Eventually, Roy Mustang, my personal favorite, and Riza Hawkeye arrive in Risenbol to recruit Ed as a state alchemist, because they don't know about that whole human transmutation thing. Ed accepts, but there's not much he can do without an arm and a leg. So Winry and Pinocchio use their automail skills to create new metal limbs for Ed. After intense training, Edward passes his certification and earns the title Fullmetal Alchemist.
Fullmetal Alchemist.
On October 3rd, 1911, don't forget, Ed and Al burned down their family home in order to leave the past behind and focus entirely on their new goal, finding a Philosopher's Stone and regaining what they lost. Their bodies, not their mom.
It's so dark.
And now, the series begins. From about August to September 1914. So now, with centuries of backstory out of the way, the series itself takes place only over the course of about 1 year. Hey, that's anime lore for ya. From here on in, we're gonna be moving a bit quicker because there's a lot of ground to cover. Lust entrusts the freezing alchemist, Isaac McDougall, with a Philosopher's Stone to create the remaining blood crest around Amestris. But now that he knows the government's true plans, he wants to kill King Bradley and save the country. Colonel Mustang, Major Alex Louise Armstrong, and the Elric brothers battle McDougall. But before he can reveal the truth, King Bradley shows up and kills him. After that, Mustang sends the Elric brothers to meet Shao Tucker, a state alchemist specializing in chimeras, who may be able to help them get their bodies back. Desperate to wow his investors and keep his license, Tucker transmutes his daughter Nina and her dog Alexander together into an unholy chimera. Still the saddest. Not over it. Ever. Understandably, the Elrics are disgusted, but before they can bring Tucker to justice, Scar arrives. In his quest for justice, he murders Shao Tucker and puts Nina out of her misery. Since Ed's a state alchemist, Scar goes after him, even though he had nothing to do with the atrocities in Ishval. Scar obliterates Ed's automail arm and most of Alphonse's body, but Mustang and Armstrong show up and force Scar to flee into the sewers. From there, the Elrics head back to Risenbol so Winry can repair them. On the way there, the two meet Dr. Marco, who gives them a clue about where to learn about the Philosopher's Stone. At the Central Library, the two decipher Marco's code and discover the truth behind the Philosopher's Stones. They are made of human souls. Unfortunately, Lust burns the library down before they can learn any more. Still, they have a lead to follow, the mysterious fifth laboratory. When the Elrics go to investigate, they encounter Envy and Lust for the first time. Before the boys can learn more, the homunculi destroy the fifth lab to cover their tracks. Meanwhile, Maze Hughes catches on to the truth behind the wars throughout the history of Amestris and the nationwide transmutation circle. But before he can tell anybody, Envy murders him. Also not over it.
Except, it's a terrible day for rain.
What do you mean? It's not raining.
Yes, it is.
Suspicions rise from about October 1914. After a lot of dead ends, Ed and Al decide to visit Izumi in Dublin to gain more information about Philosopher's Stones. Winry tags along as well so she can see the famous automail hub of Rush Valley. While she stays there to hone her abilities, the Elrics meet with Izumi. She tells them that their father, Hohenheim, has far more knowledge on Philosopher's Stones than she does. Also, since Alphonse's whole body got sucked into the gate, he knows more than any of them. Too bad those memories are repressed. Ed briefly leaves Dublin for his yearly state alchemist assessment, and in his absence, the homunculus Greed and his goons kidnap Al. Major Armstrong and King Bradley help rescue Alphonse, capturing Greed in the process. Once Bradley gets Greed back to Father melts him down into a Philosopher's Stone as punishment. Back in Rush Valley for even more automail repair, seriously Ed, take better care of those things, the gang comes across Ling Yao, a prince from Xing. He seeks the Philosopher's Stone for immortality and uses his bodyguards to force information out of the Elric brothers. Despite their initial scuffle, Ling joins the group. Back at Central Command, 2nd Lieutenant Maria Ross is being framed for the murder of Maze Hughes. Ling also gets arrested for being an illegal immigrant. Mustang knows she didn't do it, so he devises a plan to free Ling and fake the death of Maria Ross so she can flee to Xing. The homunculi catch up to them and won't go down without a fight. Luckily, Mustang uses his flame alchemy to push Lus's Philosopher's Stone to its limit and finally kill her. Back in Risenbol, Ed visits his mother's grave and runs into Hohenheim for the first time since he left. He tells Ed that the body they summoned when attempting human transmutation was not their mother after all. Once Ed digs up her body and confirms it for himself, he gets a glimmer of hope. No, really, that if bringing humans back from the dead is impossible, then that means Alphonse's original body must still be alive somewhere. His new plan is to find a way into the gate and find Al's body. Once they hear that Scar has returned, the Elric brothers try to lure him out. That way, they can have him answer for the deaths of Winry's parents and lure out the homunculi and try to figure out why the Elrics are such valuable human sacrifices. During this time, Scar meets Mei Chang, a royal princess from Xing who is skilled in alchemy. Amid all the fighting, Mustang learns King Bradley's true identity as Wrath. Additionally, Scar joins the group, albeit reluctantly. And that was 1 month. Wow. The Sacred Star of MILOS, from about November 1914. Yes, we're covering the movie. It is canon to Brotherhood, okay? While all of that is going on, the Amestrium military is detaining a young woman named Julia Crichton in Table City, the border between Amestris and Creta. After a dangerous alchemist named Melvin escapes prison with a picture of her in his possession, the military tasks the Elric brothers to investigate. Flying soldiers known as Black Bats attack them on their train ride to Table City. In the chaos, Melvin escapes and tracks Julia to the prison she's being held at, where he's confronted by Miranda, leader of the Black Bats. Melvin reveals his true identity as Ashley, Julia's long-lost brother. However, this is a bold-faced lie. He's not Ashley, but an imposter named Atlas who seeks to use the Sanguine Star of MILOS, a Philosopher's Stone. He was the one who killed Julia's family to create the stone and now seeks to create another. It turns out the real Ashley is actually a Cretan commander who is also kind of a bad guy. Together they kill Atlas, save Table City, and catch a glimpse of the Gate of Truth. With Table City saved, Ed and Al depart for Central Command to get back to the real plot. The Promised Day, from about November to April 1914. Well, after the Elric brothers shrug the whole thing off like it never happened, an enraged Gluttony attacks. He's trying to kill Mustang for murdering Lust. Instead, he eats Ed, Ling, and even Envy. Alphonse uses this situation to manipulate Gluttony, and the homunculus leads him straight to Father. Once they get to Father's underground lair, Ed, Ling, and Envy break free from Gluttony's belly. Ling is hungry for immortality, so Father infuses Greed's Philosopher's Stone into him, creating a new human homunculus and a new Greed. Envy takes the Elric brothers to meet with King Bradley, who reveals his true identity to them. To keep the Elrics and Mustang quiet, King Bradley keeps Winry and Hawkeye as hostages. The Elrics are in a bind, so they head north to Briggs to enlist the help of Major General Olivia Armstrong, Alex Louise Armstrong's older sister. They give Bradley an excuse about how they're looking for Mei Chang, since Father couldn't neutralize her alchemy. She was actually hiding inside Al's armor during the battle with Gluttony. In Briggs, the Elrics work with the Briggs soldiers to defeat Sloth by freezing him, for a little while at least. Meanwhile, back in Central Command, Hawkeye learns that King Bradley's son, Salim, is actually the first homunculus Pride. She uses a coded message to let Mustang know. From there, Mustang and Hawkeye lure Envy out and destroy their Philosopher's Stone, reducing the homunculus to a disgusting small slug creature. Back in Briggs, Ed encounters Greed/Ling, let's just call it Greeling, and coerces him to join their cause. With a large group formed, the gang learns of an alchemy method that can actually counter the massive transmutation circle Father plans to use. Finally, Hohenheim joins the group and helps form a plan for the Promised Day, the culmination of Father's 400-year plan. After joining, Hohenheim confronts Pride, who kills and consumes Gluttony to gain more power. The Promised Day finally arrives just as Sloth finishes his work. Major Armstrong and Sig manage to finally kill him though, thanks to incredible valor and respectable muscles. Mustang reveals the true nature of the government to the entire city, leading Envy to give up and ultimately commit suicide. Final battle against Father begins, but he's about to put the final step of his plan into action. He needs 5 human sacrifices to fully open the gate, those 5 being the ones who have seen the gate. That's Ed, Al, Hohenheim, and Izumi. But who's the 5th? Well, Wrath forces Mustang to perform human transmutation, blinding him and sealing his fate as the 5th sacrifice. Father successfully opens the gate and steals the souls of 50 million Amestrians. The final battle from about April 1914. With the gate of the planet open, Father gains infinite alchemical knowledge and becomes a perfect being, essentially absorbing God itself. Father goes in to finish everyone off, but Hohenheim stops him using his Philosopher's Stone. The Alkahestry reversal plan works and brings Father back down to a mortal state for the gang to battle. During this fight, Pride confronts Ed, but he gets defeated and reduced to a fetus state. Father throws out one final blast of energy, but Hohenheim saves the Elrics by taking the full blast. Hohenheim's sacrifice inspires everyone to fight harder, including Greed, who Father kills. Father's not down yet, but he's almost exhausted every Philosopher's Stone within him, weakening him greatly. Ed's automail arm is busted, so he can't use alchemy. As a last resort, Al reverses the exchange his brother made so long ago and sacrifices his soul in order for Ed's right arm to return. In a fit of rage, Ed uses both arms to launch a barrage against Father, eventually punching a hole directly through his chest. Father gets sent to the gate, where he meets the truth and is exterminated once and for all. After the fight, Ed performs human transmutation on himself, sending him to the gate. In order to bring his brother back, Ed sacrifices his ability to use alchemy and finally brings Alphonse back home in his original body. With Hohenheim's Philosopher's Stone depleted, he can finally die a peaceful death next to the grave of his beloved Trisha. Really, everyone gets some kind of closure. Mustang uses a Philosopher's Stone to restore his eyesight and plans to rise to the position of Führer. Scar begins his plans to rebuild Ishbal, and Ed and Winry get married in a very cute, nerdy, alchemy-ish way, and they end up having a kid. Also, Al and May end up together. All is well. Wow! That was one hell of a timeline. Thank you all so much for sticking with me. I'm Cristal with GetintheRobot. It is comfy in here.
And cut!